Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Supernatural Files. But this is not like any ordinary supernatural video because this is the Halloween edition. We're going to focus on a Halloween staple, a creature that has been featured in many religions. And it has been adapted for the American audience, which is a creature so American that it basically spawned stories of itself from the Halloween lore. But Halloween is a special time of year, said that it is the time where the veil between the supernatural realm and the living is so thin that ghosts and spirits have been mentioned that they can cross over into the living realm. Is it myth or is it fact? We don't know. Only time will tell. But speaking of Halloween, this creature we are going to talk about basically spawned a whole city in itself. We're talking about the town of Sleepy Hollow, where the Headless Horseman is said to originate from. Is it fact or is it myth? We don't know. So let's get into the story, the myth, the legend of the Headless Horseman himself. The Headless Horseman is a mythical figure in English and American folklore since the Middle Ages. This entity is very similar to the Headless Reapers or demonic fairy known as dullahan in Irish myth. The most commonly known examples of the Headless Horseman is from the American tale, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, by Washington Irving, and the English tale Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. The 14th century poem Gawain and the Green Knight features a headless horseman who is the titular giant knight. After he is beheaded by Gawain, the Green Knight lifts his head up with one hand and rides from the hall, challenging Gawain to meet him again 1 year later. The most prominent Scots tale of the Headless Horseman concerns a man named Owen, decapitated in a clan battle at Glen Kinnear on the Isle of Mull. The battle denied him any chance to be the chieftain. Now let's get into the legend of Sleepy Hollow. The legend of the Headless Horseman, also known as the Headless Hassan of the Hollow, begins in Sleepy Hollow, New York. During the American Revolutionary War, traditional folklore holds that the horseman was a Hassan trooper who was killed during the Battle of the White Plains in 1776. He was decapitated by an American cannibal, and the shattered remains of his head were left on the battlefield while his comrades hastily carried his body away. Eventually, they buried him in the cemetery of the Old Dutch Church of Sleepy Hollow, from which he rises as a malevolent ghost, fiercely seeking his lost head. Focus on the good guy of the scenario in Sleepy Hollow, Ichabod Crane. Irving describes Crane as tall but exceedingly lank, with narrow shoulders, long arms. Down with some spooky storytelling include tales of a ghost of a Hassan mercenary who literally lost his head during the Battle of White Plains in October 1776. Ever since, the Hassan's head was blown to smithereens by an American cannibal. His pissed off ghost materializes from the grave each night with the fiery-eyed ghost steed to search for his missing brain case. Ichabod is a bit of a jumpy guy. On his ride home, he's chased by a pitch-black steed straddled by what looks like to be a decapitated Johnny Cash, whose missing noggin is pierced on the pommel of his saddle. Ichabod races his horse, Gunpowder. The horse has a much cooler name than his rider deserves, toward the old church bridge. which the locals have claimed the specter cannot cross. But to no avail, both Ichabod reaches the bridge. The goblin pitches his severed dome dodgeball style and pelts Ichabod smack dab in the cranium, knocking him from his horse. Ichabod is never seen again. The townspeople manage to locate the scene of the scuffle and find Ichabod's hat and a smashed pumpkin. Brom consequently marries Katrina, and nobody really misses the awkward outsider who they assumed was carried away by the Headless Hassan. Everybody goes on with their lives, although there's some speculation that Ichabod just up and left town. The appearance of the Headless Horseman is traditionally depicted as a man upon horseback who is missing his head. Depending on the legend, the horseman is either carrying his head or missing his head altogether and is searching for it. Let's get into the physical characteristics of the Headless Horseman. The exact physical appearance of the Headless Horseman can vary depending on the specific interpretation or adaptation, but some features include the head. Obviously, the most noted feature of the Headless Horseman is his missing head. In some depictions, there may be a stump or bloody neck where the head should be, while in others, he may carry the head with him or wear a cloak or hat that covers the missing part of his body. Horse. The Headless Horseman is usually depicted as riding a horse, which often describes being jet black and have glowing red eyes. The rider. The Headless Horseman typically is portrayed as a tall, imposing figure with broad shoulders and a flowing cape or cloak. He may be wearing old-fashioned clothing such as a tricorn hat or military uniform, depending on the specific story or adaptations. Let's get into the powers and abilities of the Headless Horseman. Some of the most common powers and abilities associated with the Headless Horseman include immortality. The Headless Horseman is often depicted as being immortal. Supernatural strength. The Headless Horseman is usually portrayed as having superhuman strength. Horseback riding. The Headless Horseman is a skilled horseman and is often depicted as being able to ride his horse with exceptional skill and agility. Precision with weapons. The Headless Horseman is typically portrayed as an expert with a range of weapons including swords, axes, and guns. Flaming pumpkin throwing. In some adaptations, the Headless Horseman is said to be able to throw pumpkins or other objects at his enemies, which can cause serious damage. Supernatural abilities. The Headless Horseman is often depicted as having the ability to appear and disappear at will, control the movements of his horses without using reins, and move it at incredible speeds. Thank you all for joining me in this episode of the very special Halloween edition of the Supernatural Files, where we explored the legend, the myth, and the story of the Headless Horseman and how it has impacted people not only from the past, not only from the present, but how it will affect people in the future. It's the Headless Horseman a real figure? I don't know. Wait, do you hear that? I think it's time for me to go because I think the Headless Horseman is coming for me. But before I go, if you like this video, hit the red subscribe button down below. Hit the thumbs up, notification bell to always on, and leave a comment down below. I'm getting out of here before the Headless Horseman comes and takes my head off my neck. So I'll see you guys in the next one. See ya.